Hey everyone, this is John Puritz. Welcome to the Man Up Already podcast. This show is dedicated to each of us being better in all areas of our lives, mentally, spiritually, physically, and relationally. We want to help you be a better you because when you man up already, the world around you is greatly impacted. Here on the podcast, we don't believe you're an accident. We believe each of us is created for purpose, and this show is dedicated to helping you discover and live out that purpose. Again, welcome to the show, and let's check out another great episode. All right, everyone. Hey, welcome to the Man Up Already podcast, and as always, super excited to have you here. And I say it every single episode, but every time I'm excited for what we're going to talk about, who we have on the show. And today's going to be another killer episode. Before we dive into the content and introduce our guest, want to remind everybody it is coming up. It's just a week away. The Man Up Already Growth Conference in Port St. Lucie, Florida, June 10th on a Saturday, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Go to manupalready.com. It's going to be here. It's going to be awesome. Speakers are incredible. And we'll have, I'm sure, incredible resources after that event. But manupalready.com is going to be the hub of all things for this podcast moving forward as it evolves and grows and this movement continues to pick up speed. So make sure you get out there. If you're in the area, get your, I said it last episode, if you're a man, get your butt down there. And if you're a woman, kick your man in the ass and get him to that event because it is going to be killer. And with that, I'm super pumped to bring in our guest. I talk all the time about connecting with people and building relationships and the power of your posse. I think that is a running theme of the Man Up Already movement of who's in your circle, and your circle expands. It introduces you to other great people. And this guy, we connected on LinkedIn. It's like a running theme for me through mutual friends. And it's just an instant connection. I have such incredible respect for what he's up to. I love following him and just pumped to have him on our podcast. He is the co-founder and chairman of Alchemy 365. He is the founder of Argent Alpha, which is committed to making men over 50 harder to kill. Love that. He's a husband, a father, a grandfather, and someone who has abandoned the cold weather for the warmer weathers of Arizona. Super excited to have Scott Jagodzinski in the Man Up Already podcast. Scott, welcome.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Yeah, man. Good to have you. I'm trying to remember the sequence of events, but I think it was making men harder to kill. That was the thing that really drove me to like, what are you up to? What are you doing? And led to our connection. So I want to start there because I just freaking love the attitude behind that mindset.
Yeah. Well, it was, I'll go into the backstory maybe later, but it's a culmination of one, just looking around the world, and the world needs men more than ever, especially men who are harder to kill. I mean, look at obesity. Overweight and obesity rates are hitting nearly 80% by 2030. That's what the CDC is saying, that the men of this country, not just men over 50, but just men in general. And soft men are not what formed this country. They're not what led this country. They don't make good husbands. They don't make good fathers. They don't make good colleagues or brothers. And so my little bit of trying to change that around is helping guys over 50 who have probably done pretty well in life. Their balance sheets are great, but their bellies are off. So it's like, I'm a big believer in how you do anything is how you do everything. And so it's leveling up that personal health and fitness. And I don't know if you follow Peter Attia, but he has this concept about health span and lifespan. Health span is the quality of life. And who wants to live a long life with just a deteriorating quality of living? And so that's like, let's go out swinging, man. Let's be starting businesses and doing nonprofits and doing awesome things as we get older. And as Suzette Murray says, she's not 58, she's level 58. And I'm the same thing. I'm level 58 and I can't wait to get to level 59. So spinning this whole idea about age as a negative around and just helping you accomplish.
When we're talking about just, the theme of this podcast obviously is right expanding and growing and getting better. And I'd love to chat with you just on how important, because you're in the more, you've taken on the physical aspect of this, growth process. But how often that is neglected, right? I was in an environment in the past where people were like growing businesses and making lots of money, and they were like, one day I'll get the fitness in check, but right now, right, I've got to pick one, and I'm going to pick, growing a business and making money. And I remember going, I can't do that. Like, they go hand in hand. It may be a slower process, but I don't want to end up with my health in jeopardy at the point where I can start to enjoy what I've worked so hard to do. They've kind of got to coincide.
Yeah, totally agree. And I can't say I've always lived 100% in alignment either. I remember back in my 30s, we had a growing business, sold that to a publicly held company. And I remember my weight just creeping up a little bit. Caffeine intake was going up. Alcohol was going just a little bit, right? And it took a few sort of my knee was one. I can talk about my bone-on-bone knee experience, how I overcame that. But I was able to get back on track, and really it was right around 2010. My wife was reading a book by Suzanne Summers, and I don't know if everybody jokes about Chrissy from Three's Company, but she's been a real leader in, especially not only just women's healthcare, but just people in general. And she's out on the cutting edge, and that got me interested in what is this whole idea about longevity, age reversal, bioidentical hormones, just this whole world that is really outside of the traditional healthcare system. So, and I think the answers are not in the traditional healthcare system. The Western medicine is great at treating, you break your arm, you've got some disease, but man, I think most of the answers are not with if your first question is it covered by insurance, you're on the wrong path already.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I mean, and that is, it's a soapbox that we've been standing on for a while, right? And it's an interesting thing, right, that we're having this conversation today because just personally, our daughter's having some serious issues, from a ulcerative colitis issue, and we were just talking at the table on how many health issues pop up today versus certainly when you and I were younger in our 20s, right? They're different, and because our food has changed, our system has changed, our medication has changed. Just every, you watch TV and how many ads there are for drugs that have the potential to just completely ruin you. It's an interesting thing where you can't rely on the traditional system to keep you healthy, right? They maybe find a way to sustain you, but maybe you could talk about that a little bit because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think for me, where I don't know where I got this from, but it was a book by a former, of all people, former United Healthcare executive, and it was the CEO what was it? The Doctor in the Mirror was the name of it. So basically, like, you're your own doctor. Look in the mirror. You need to take control of your healthcare. You need to be CEO of your health. And to me, it's one of those. It's never failed yet. Seek and you shall find. You go looking, you will find answers. But you got to be curious. You got to want to find a better way. But I think if you're just taking, I think the days are gone, for me they are, but just believing whatever the doctor says. Statins are written out, they're handed out like candy at a parade. And there might be an appropriate use for statins, but you talk to most doctors who are enlightened and they're way overprescribed. And it's roughly $1 trillion industry. This was just on Joe Rogan's podcast, a guy named Dr. Asim, Hostrada or something like that, but a fascinating guy. And he kind of blew up the whole thing about statins about 10 years ago. And again, just like with COVID, he was attacked for saying something that wasn't part of the narrative. And so to me, anybody who's attacked by the media is someone you should probably go listen to. Now, they still might be crazy, but there's a good chance they might have some answers too.
Yeah, that's really good. And I mean, that's been a running theme in history, right? Those that people think are nuts or outlandish or against the system are typically seeing something that the masses are not.
Yeah. Well, it's like first they're ridiculed, then they're attacked, and then it's accepted as common knowledge. These things as truth as it goes through these sort of phases. And to me, the vaccine is one of those. I mean, I don't know on limits or off limits on your podcast, but that's one of the biggest hoaxes I think ever pulled over on the world.
There are no limits here. It's not we're not trying to be politically correct here. And it's funny because I'm speaking at a church on Sunday, and to me, the greatest attack from the enemy, or the greatest tool that he used, was COVID-19. I mean, you want to, like, nothing is the same and not for the better.
Right.
I mean, you isolate people, you fill their minds with garbage, you inject them with garbage, and we have taken monumental steps back.
Yeah, it's funny. I know we could go down a whole rabbit hole with the last 3 years, and how the people who were the people who were ridiculed early are finally being held up in the light of, oh, maybe they were right. Like guys like Dr. Peter McCullough is one. I was just reading one of his newsletters, and that guy was out early with this stuff, just saying, hey, time out here, careful. And so, yeah, I think it's like, be careful. I mean, I always joke, people did more research buying a washer and dryer than they did before just taking the jab. I mean, free cheeseburger, give me the jab. It's crazy. And then you talk about medical freedom and the right to choose, and the hypocrisy that went on with that whole side of that issue. Like, medical autonomy until now, roll your sleeve up and get the jab, or you're fired. So anyway, I'll probably piss off a lot of people who are watching this who, if you probably don't get many from that side anyways, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, look, hey, you can get pissed off, but you gotta start asking questions. I mean, look, and we can talk about that a little bit, because I think we're still dealing with the fallout of that. Number one, the ridicule that our family got from our family was, I mean, the damage done to our family from that is irreparable. Just because we said, wait a minute, I'm not going to put something in my body that I know nothing about, number one, or two, is untested, right? And if you're going to put anything in your body, you can't the test doesn't last a day or a week, a month, right? We're talking months before we can figure out if this is the right thing. And the ridicule that we got was out of hand. And the crazy thing is when I said, have you done the research? The answer was no. And then I asked, are you going to? Are you open to seeing what we see? And you know what the answer was?
No.
So we can call that whatever we want, but the real answer is, well, that's just stupid, right? It's not even ignorance. The refusal to get educated is stupidity.
Well, I'm just looking at a picturing a bunch of lemmings going over the cliff.
Yeah.
Just following it. But, and again, it could be anything. And to me, this shouldn't be a political issue. It should just be critical thinking. One, there shouldn't be any force involved whatsoever. We are a nation of individuals. We're not groups. It's people. You, me, wives, kids. So this whole idea of freedom, I mean, it's under assault, man. You mentioned the enemy. It's like our pastor is talking about this. He said, what was once forbidden becomes tolerated and then celebrated.
Yep.
And then the opposite's true. Take the family. Once celebrated, now it's tolerated. And question is, will it soon be forbidden? Let's hope not. But.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, and we are going to go here because the spiritual battle lines have been drawn. My daughter sent me an article this morning, and then it showed up literally in the New York Post. I read the New York Post from because I'm being up there, and it's probably leans a little bit more conservative. But Chick-fil-A, right? Chick-fil-A has now got a diversity, equity, and inclusion vice president in Chick-fil-A, and one of the things that somebody said was, the words that the attack comes in this manner, the words that you and I would say, you should be equal, you should, right, be inclusive, right? Equal is all men are created, equally on the earth under God, right? You should include and be tolerant of people and their cultural changes and their identity differences. But that's how we interpret those words. But the switch is no. Right? It's not equal. It's what we say should be acceptable, and include everything comes from a power, like what we say you should do. So what's happening is we're relabeling words so that people accept them because of old terminology, but the new terminology is something very different. And that's literally happening in Chick-fil-A right now. You're saying everybody should be, equal and inclusive, but that's not what you're really accepting. You're abandoning conservative biblical Christian views for a new world order.
Right. Yeah, and it's just right out of the book 1984 by George Orwell. I think one of the lines in there is war is peace. It's just
right.
Hate is love. It's just completely changing the meanings of words. To me, it comes back to like there's a lot of money and power in victim versus victor. Just like cast people as victims. Hey, that's not fair. Jump on that bandwagon, and it's just too bad. I mean, but that's where I go back to. For me, I can't change what's in DC. I can't change what's in the state. I'm going to put my efforts into this little business, and I'm working with men who are successful, have performed optimally in other areas of their life, and so I'm hoping as I get more of these guys trained up on the health and fitness side, someday we'll have an effect on some of these things, even if it's just through our actions and how we raise our families and the people we are peer. I love your comment, the power of your posse. I mean, that's what we're building, is a powerful posse here. So I think we need more of that.
100%. And look, I love what you said. How you do one thing is how you do everything, right? If you want to think right, you got to move right. But if you want to move right, you got to think right. Like they go hand in hand. And I think what's important of this posse and this movement is there is a movement in society to emasculate men, obviously, right? And I don't think it's happening necessarily with our generation, though it is definitely happening with the generations below us, which is why I think this movement is so important. I mean, you now have, I don't know if you saw this Glamour magazine, not that that's a manly magazine, but you have a woman who is quote unquote transitioning into a man, pregnant, and you're calling that men can be pregnant. Like, that is absolute utter bullshit and a complete lie, right? But if you have this movement that takes out the warriors, right? If you have a military of people that they're not manly, in what divine manhood is, defending your family, standing up, being the foundation, the rock that people can trust, integrity, all the things I talk about here on the podcast and in my book, standing on integrity, humility, authenticity, morality. Those are what I call the 4 pillars. If you take out men that stand on those character pillars, right, and they lead their families and they lead their communities, you're right for the taking. So I think what you're doing is so vitally important, because if we're going to fight the battle, the spiritual battle, the battle every day that men are called to fight, you've got to be mentally ready and you've got to be physically ready, and they both go hand in hand.
Yeah, I agree. And I think men function better when they have expectations of themselves and of their posse, of the group. That, I use the term band of brothers or tribe.
Yep.
I like this posse term. So I think if you have expectations, and then you know what success looks like. I mean, knowing what good looks like, because it's so easy to kind of have the water in the bathtub get really warm, and it's comfortable, and all of a sudden you're 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds overweight. You can't do some of the basic physical things that I think men should be able to do. And so it's showing guys what's possible. So the guys in our group, we don't have any freak athletes. What we're doing isn't a fitness program, but I tend to lead with fitness because it's what gets guys' attention. It's really a mindset or lifestyle shift program that includes sleep, nutrition, fitness, hydration. And it starts with mindset, though. I mean, I always joke, I don't get any negative mindset guys calling me. They just don't call. I mean, the worst I get is neutral plus. It's like, if they're willing to like believe that things can change. And I've got guys, in their late 60s doing nearing double-digit strict pull-ups. And, it's like, yeah, we've all seen these things on the internet, these videos, and you wonder if they're real people. It's like, well, I've got a bunch of savages who are real people, or they're savages to be. They're on that journey. So, and guys who come in here are just normal Joes. I mean, they've had a lot of them unbelievable careers, but once they get their mindset shifted, and that's the other thing. I don't know if you've read the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, but he talks about limiting beliefs, and we all have them. And so That's one of the things with these guys is just breaking them down one at a time. And that's where it helps having guys going first. So, I mean, like Clint is a great example. Clint's out leading the charge. I mean, he's a great cheerleader. He walks the talk. And he eats unbelievably clean. He's a Spartan, man. He brings it every day.
Yeah,
So
he does.
we have a little, we'll have like, we're in Slack all the time. So we'll have like little Slack chats going back and forth. And a wall sit was our big challenge in May. So it was accumulate 2 hours of a wall sit across the month of May. And then it's like, hey, if you get to a 10-minute wall sit, that's like, that's a pretty dang good. So Clint just keeps doing it and just you got 13 minutes, just like crushed everybody. But then there's a bunch of guys coming out of the woodwork, 8 minutes, 9 minutes. And so that's the power of the posse. I mean, none of us on our own probably would even came close to those numbers. And again, none of us are in the same spot. We're all spread out geographically. So using some of this technology to really bring guys together and align around a common purpose. Say we all want to become harder to kill.
Yeah.
It's just really been a lot of fun. And it's great to see the results, man. It's like, it just works.
I love it. And I'm just going to have a selfish moment of monopolizing your time on this issue because I'm 53 this year. And at the beginning of the year, I had worked with Clint a little bit last year. He gave me a workout and I'm just finding that I had moved my company and there was so much going on. I couldn't stick to this routine that I like. And I'm definitely a guy that does well in a system and in a routine. So at the beginning of the year, I was like, all right, I need something. I bought a V-Shred workout. It was like $67 to get that guy Vince's workout. And it was lifting. And I had put a video out there a couple of weeks ago that I am in pain. My body does not respond well to just straight lifting like that, right? And so I got bigger, but I didn't like how I felt. I certainly didn't like carrying it around. And going back to group and to fitness, P90X, believe it or not, changed my life at 40. I love that workout and my body responds to it. And so I just started it to do its push-ups, its pull-ups, it's hit intervals and my body's like, thank you. Like I can literally feel the difference in what, just changing that workout. But my question for you is, as we get older, how does working out need to shift for men, 50 plus, versus, like you're surrounded by 30-year-olds or whatever. And, you can do certain things that you can't do today or shouldn't do. I'm just noticing that my recovery time is much, much slower, post workout. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I think we've got 5 pillars in Argent Alpha that we call the Alpha 5. So think of them as standards that you set for yourself, and then you raise them over time. So your standards will be different than my standards, but they're all directionally aligned. And so mindset, sleep, nutrition, fitness, hydration. So in the fitness one, what we're doing, again, with the harder to kill as kind of the halo over this, you become easier to kill as you lose muscle mass. And that just happens naturally each year. It's called sarcopenia. And so if you don't do anything, you will lose muscle mass. And that's, when they show you body fat percentages, the acceptable range for like healthy, they get higher as we age because they're just taking into account muscle loss. It's like, well, that doesn't have to be true. We can completely offset that. So there's there's a handful of things we do to offset that. One, you need to do resistance training. So that can take a lot of different forms. You can do push-ups and pull-ups and body weight movements. You can do bodybuilding. You can do CrossFit. There's so many different things. We have our own proprietary program that we use, that we developed around Peter Attia's 4 pillars of fitness for longevity. And then Brock Harling, he runs our training. He added in mobility as the 5th pillar because especially guys over 50, shoulder issues, I'd say half the guys have.
Yeah.
And so working through, is that an issue that can be solved through basically physical therapy you do on yourself? Do you need a doctor of physical therapy? Do you need some peptides like BPC 157 or some products like that? Or do you need to potentially, worst case, an ortho, because orthos like to cut. So that's why I would say, like, that's the last solution. There's so many things to go through. I did that with my knee. So I'd say like no matter what you do, if you love to, like we have a lot of guys that like to cycle, great, keep cycling. But if you don't add resistance training, you're going to lose muscle mass because your heart's probably fine. You're exercising way beyond what your heart needs to be healthy. And so the other missing part of this is guys tend to come in the program way under on what they need from a protein perspective. So we use the 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So if a guy comes in at 240 and his ideal body weight's 200, we'll say target 200 grams of protein a day. And most guys can't start with that. So they'll start at about 70% of that number, so 140 grams. And then week after week, just keep upping that. And you do high protein like that. Again, high quality protein. I love grass-fed beef, pasture-raised chicken, wild-caught salmon, those kind of not plant proteins. I'm not a plant protein guys. I mean, Dr. Mark Hyman says, if you want to add muscle, you need to eat muscle. So you get your protein up there, you do resistance training, and then you're in a small caloric deficit. I've got one of our guys, he lost 24 pounds of fat over 6 months and lost 0 muscle. Wow. Because what they don't talk to you about in these quote unquote weight loss programs is you're losing muscle and fat because they don't even look at it. That's why we do in-body scans to test body composition every month. So we know within 30 days off track or on track, whether it's weight, fat, or muscle, because you want to preserve every pound of muscle and you can add muscle. We've got one guy, 65. He's lost, I think now 25 pounds of muscle or fat rather. He's added 3 pounds of muscle. So he's done what you aren't supposed to be able to do. Lost fat and added muscle over, I think he's at about 5 months right now. So that's what I'd say. Like, hey, if it's working for you, just get an in-body scan. You know, you don't have to do it every month if you don't want to, but that's like your litmus test. And if your muscle mass, if you start seeing a trend going down a couple pounds, that's a red flag to say up the protein. Hydration, our guidance is half your body weight in ounces of water every day. So if you're a 200-pound guy, get 100 ounces of water minimum. I do about 70%. So I'm about 200 pounds. I get 140 every day. And if you work out, you just need to be there. And guys will joke, like, I feel like I'm being waterboarded when they go through this initially. And it's because most Americans are chronically dehydrated. So these are the basics. But man, we're still young. I mean, we've been around, I think less than a year with actually paid members. We had an initial group of guys who were testing it with me. I did it on myself, then I did it with a test group of guys, and then we rolled out live last October. So, but I'm excited about the data as it comes in but it's like anything, you got to do the work. The guys who do the work get the results. The guys this is where the limiting beliefs come up. Busy with work, kids, my wife doesn't cook that way. I mean, I'm kind of a Jocko Willink there. It's like, good. I mean, that's just another input. You got to own every input in your life, whether you control it or not.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I want to touch on 2 things. One, hydration. It wasn't until I did 75 hard from Andy Frisella that I drink a gallon of water a day. I mean, like it became and it was amazing how in drinking that gallon, I never realized how thirsty my body really was.
Yeah.
Until you break the seal. So that became a habit. But then the other thing that I'm on the bandwagon for big time with men is sleep. And I tried to hack sleep, Scott, like crazy. I tried everything, aromatherapy, mouth taping, nose plugs, all kinds of things, until I finally had a sleep study done not that long ago. And I've been sleeping with a CPAP machine for the last 3 weeks. And last night I slept literally from 11 to 5 without having to get up. I haven't done that since my 20s, maybe even my teens. Mm-hmm. And I just think about, how we say, oh, well, men snore and men do this, and we pass so many things on. But, man, I encourage men out there to get a sleep study done because I am a different human because I do not have that depression and that fatigue that I've learned to live with for 30-something years.
Well, you're kind of an outlier because you're a fit guy, and that still didn't solve your – and I don't know if you were ever unfit or if you went through any
No.
So – because most guys, again, I have them when they come in, I see the in-body scans. Our guys mirror the general population. Their body fat is higher than where it should be. And so, like, it's easier to get a pill, get a machine, get a procedure. And it's like, hey, if we got you down to 15% body fat, it might take off so many of these things off the table. Like your blood pressure is probably going to drop, your insulin resistance goes away, your cravings go away, your sleep improves, your sex life gets better. I had a guy post this morning on LinkedIn about if your morning wood isn't good, there's an issue. It's like I kind of had to laugh at it, but he's right. I mean, so there's all these little things, and they probably aren't going to be answered by your United Healthcare. Well, let me retract that because I don't want to get sued. But your insurance-backed doctor, it's just
Right.
like that's just not what they're set up to do. So it's but I agree with you, Sleep. I'm an Oura Ring user, so my 4 of our 5 family members use it. So we jokingly say we're competitive sleepers. What was your HRV last night? What was your deep sleep? What was your, how long did it take you to fall asleep? So, but the Oura Ring is amazing. You don't need an Oura Ring, but it gives you a lot of insights. And I do believe the Hawthorne effect, that where the act of just observing something can change the outcome. I think there's something about that. I mean, I've looked at my sleep score over the last 4 years now. That's gone up dramatically from I think in the 70s to right now this year I'm averaging about an 89 out of 100, and deep sleep has tripled. And so it's funny, but you're right. I didn't think I had a problem until I started seeing the trend line. It's like I'm lifting as much today as I not quite. I haven't quite hit my age 50. I was into CrossFit a lot, and those are my numbers I'm going for age 60. So I've got 547 days is my target to get those numbers back. But again, sleep is going to be a huge component of that. And now on that note, I'm on day 4 of the Whole30. I don't know if you ever heard of the Whole30.
I have. Yep.
But that one is so far so good. But that's going to be another one where I get done and say, everybody says you feel awesome. And because I mean, I love to have a beer. I love to have a glass of wine. I've given up caffeine. You don't have to give it up with Whole30, but I just said, let's throw that out of the window too. And so I'm going to layer them back in starting in July. But I like to do this stuff as guinea pigs for a lot of we have a few guys in our group who are like this, where they'll try anything. And you need that canary in a coal mine. And again, it's not that risky, right? We all follow Ben Greenfields and Dave Asprey's and Jay Campbell, all these guys out there who are trying interesting things. So I just think that's my goal, is to get guys first introduced to this, the initial concept of just losing some fat. And then as they do this, guys are going to go, hey, tell me more about hormone optimization. What's that all about? Or what are peptides about? Could they help me? Or maybe I should buy an Oura Ring. And so there's kind of like an order of magnitude. A lot of guys don't want to go right to the biohack, right to the thing. It's like, because they got money and they can spend it on it. But it's like the basics. One of our guys, Dr. Omar, he talks about he's an MD. He works with special forces, and they ask them, what made you guys so high speed? And Dr. Omar, I apologize if we're screwing up the quote, but basically the guy said, hey, we're just like you guys. We're just world class at the basics. And like that really resonated with me because it makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what's your, and because I watched Chris Hemsworth's thing. I think it was called Limitless or something to that effect. And one of the episodes was, cold water therapy. And you see a lot of, cold water baths, cold water showers. Like, where are you in that camp, and what's your thoughts on it? Because I freaking hate the cold, but I keep hearing how the benefits of it are pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'll start off with, for all guys listening to this, major in the minors, or excuse me, don't major in the minors. So I would put cold plunge therapy it's a minor for a guy who's, if you're over 20% body fat, probably not something that won't hurt you, but it shouldn't be a part of your regimen.
Yeah.
If you're a guy who's at 15% or less, absolutely. I think these things are good because one, I think some of the benefits of that is one, it just gets you comfortable being uncomfortable. I mean, and there's just power in that because that's life, man. And so there's that. There's all these health benefits to it. My doc, he's working with me now. He recommended the Whole30 to, he just wants to improve my gut health. And he recommended cold plunging 3 times a week. And so I used to do it regularly when I was doing CrossFit. I did cryotherapy, but so that's on my list to get back into it. So I'd say things like cold plunge therapy. I put red light therapy in the same bucket. I think if you've got all the basics nailed, go for it. But the experience I've had is guys who go after those things who don't nail the basics are never going to make progress.
Yeah,
It's
a great tip. It really is a great tip. So, just because I would love to know the story behind these things, because one thing that they all connect, right? So you're hacking your fitness and your nutrition and all these things. Where did there's obviously an entrepreneurial spirit there as well, because you started Alchemy 365. Talk about, I'd love to just hear that story of how that came about and what that is.
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders, but I would say I was more I was the initial investor, and they jokingly referred. I had 4 partners at the time that co-founded with me, and they jokingly referred to me as the seagull. Fly in, shit all over everything, and fly out. and so anyway, we started that thing in we did the first class in the office of the old business I ran, and it was just like the first episode or the movie of Iron Man, where Robert Downey Jr. builds the initial one to break out. It was like so crude, but it was the first one. And so I got to know these guys. So I was doing CrossFit, and I love to get to know the owners of a business if you like the business. So Mike Jones and Tyler Quinn were the 2 guys that are still involved. And I just got to know those guys and liked them. And I remember Tyler saying that, hey, we've got this other concept, because, we can't really grow a business in CrossFit, because you have an affiliate, and it's more of you can't really scale that as a business. And so he said, but we've got this concept. It's like CrossFit's on one end of the continuum, yoga's on the other. There's this big space in the middle. What if we kind of took elements of both and combined them in a little more of a unique environment? So if you walk into an Alchemy, you'll see typically 4 rows of an overhead bar. And so we do a lot of stuff on the bar, whether it's pull-ups or toes to bar, or putting rings on there, or just a lot of different things. And so Tyler's been the master of the program. He's now the CEO. Mike's on the board. And we rolled this out and tested it in a CrossFit gym, just with members of the CrossFit gym, people we knew, and people were coming. It was just really trying to find a little bit of the product market fit on what do people really like, what works. And so that was where the workouts were really refined. And so they were really inspired by a lot of CrossFit type movements, but CrossFit is a little too extreme for a lot of people, and you got to be really good at math. And so this is one of those, like you don't have to count, you don't have to report your scores. And I'd say 2/3 of our members are probably 2/3, maybe 70%, right around there, are women. And I got to tell you, there's nothing cooler than a woman getting her first pull up. It's like, it's a proxy for, what else can I do? It's like, It's an empowering thing. And we get so many testimonials from people when they, just about how Alchemy's changed their life. But so it was, we started with 1 location, grew to 2, opened up. I think we got to, trying to remember how many we were at in 2019. I think we had 7 locations, and we made the Inc. 5000 at number 629. So things are rocking. So it's like the first week in March 2020, we're going to go out and raise a $5 million Series A, and then
COVID.
Yeah, that COVID happens. And, we were in 2 blue states, Minnesota and Denver. So lockdown, if we would have been in Florida, it would have been a whole different deal. As far as, because we lost probably over 70% of our members.
Wow.
And we had some awesome members who just kept paying their membership dues for a long time when they didn't have to. We scrambled, did Alchemy Anywhere, which was a digital product. But, going from a brick and mortar studio to a digital product, it's almost like we probably would have been just as good as going out and just baking bread or something. It's like, it's a whole different business. Yeah. I mean, you're trading $1 for a penny, and we weren't charging for it anyway. So we learned a lot from it, but we came out, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And on a good note, we were able to renegotiate a lot of debt and leases. Some landlords were great to work with. Everybody who has stake in Alchemy was really flexible with us to help us, like, hey, either we're going to die or you help us not die. And so most of them were very flexible with us. Came out of that and barely opened up another studio. We opened up 2 now since, but with a completely different model, lower cost structure, lower break even, same experience in the classroom. So in a way, we got to be thankful for COVID, because it made us a better business. We have a better model now. on a unit level, it's just a really profitable model. So now we're in the stages of figuring out, okay, where do we go from here? Do we want to just grow organically? Do we want to raise capital? And I think, going through the experience, we're a little bit more on the, let's press the gas, but let's not press the gas all the way down, because there's so many things that were out of our control during COVID that you think about it. It's like you start making bets and you wonder, man, if these extraneous factors come into play, what happens now? Can we?
Right.
So, but it's a if you ever get up to Minneapolis or Denver, it's an awesome workout. I mean, people joke like, hey, our warm up's your workout. it's one of those kind of deals.
I love it. Well, and it's funny. I go to Colorado every year, typically for what's called the Band of Brothers, and I fly into Denver. So the next time I do that, I'm not going this year, but and I have family in Minnesota. So who knows? Now that I know, where it is, I definitely want to experience that. But there's some things that you talked about that I think are worth spending a little time on, and that is. And I think it's Napoleon Hill who said, with every adversity is the equal seat of opportunity. And that happened in COVID for so many of us. I mean, we just celebrated literally 1 year in business of our new firm after leaving an old firm after 18 years. And it was because of what we learned in COVID and how we pivoted that we realized the business that we want to grow in the future couldn't be done where we were at. And this last year was the most profitable year ever for us in business because of learning, applying. And if COVID never happened, I don't know what would have happened. You know what I mean? So we talk about, there's the persecution and all these negative things that have happened, but in there are the things that you can grow from and thrive from and excel. That it always happens in every obstacle. And then I think that ties into everything that we're talking about. Is life is going to throw you those obstacles. Where are the seeds that you can use to come out of that experience better than you were before it happened?
Yeah, I mean it's classic Jocko stuff. I mean, extreme ownership, like
right.
Hey, broke my leg. Good, gives me time to read more books.
Right.
It's that kind of thing. Where if and it comes back to victim or victor. Like, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to give up and whine and complain and this sucks. And I mean, you're going to have a little bit of that, but you just can't spend much time there. You got to get into the victor side of things and go, okay, it's hand we're dealt. Now what?
Right.
And that was necessity is the mother of invention. I mean, that we had to come up with, and we just asked ourselves some questions like, what would it look like if we only had 80 grand to open up a new studio, which was maybe literally like 20% of what, maybe even less of what it took earlier. Well, smaller footprint, different CapEx on the build out, just a whole different bunch of, do we need bathrooms or not? Do we need showers? We need bathrooms. Do we need showers? Do we need 2 studios? How about 1? So went through all that. And again, overcoming limiting beliefs, challenging limiting beliefs. And it worked. I mean, the break evens were lower. The customer acquisition costs didn't really change, but the path to profitability, we opened the last 2 now, way in the black. So literally no opening and hoping we would get profitable. They were all profitable when they opened. And that came out of COVID. That was not our model before. It was a little bit like grow the top line. We'll worry about the profits later. Well, we weren't successful enough to take that approach. And I don't like that approach anyway. I mean, I'm still an old school. It's better to make money than to lose money, in almost everything. Because, and we're not Silicon Valley types here, in Minnesota. It's back that old fashioned stuff.
Yeah, you bet.
Get a customer, keep a customer, make them happy, make a profit. Everybody wins. So, but yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I'm glad I didn't know that about your business. That's impressive. I mean, to not only have that kind of a dramatic change, but then have a record year. I mean, I'm guessing you're saying, why didn't we think of this earlier?
No, I don't think we did. But it's all the hero's journey, which seems to keep coming up, right? There's stages of we just weren't mentally and emotionally ready.
Yeah.
And I talk about it all the time. You don't make real lasting change until you're emotionally connected to the outcome. And there was a lot of fear there. There was a lot of unknown. There was a lot of loyalty. I've learned so much about the things that hold us back, self-imposed traps, limiting beliefs, but also the other people's beliefs and other people's viewpoints and how they shape you. And I want to pull out something that I just thought of while you were talking about that, is two very powerful questions you can ask. Number one is why? Mm-hmm. Well, this is what we do. Okay, great. Why? You know what I mean? Like, I think we can keep asking, well, why, right? And then ultimately you get down to that core reason, and sometimes that core reason isn't really good enough. It's the story. You ever hear that story of the husband asking, newly married couple, and the husband asks his wife, she takes out a ham and she cuts off both ends. And he goes, why are you doing that? You ever hear this story?
No.
Oh my God, yeah. So married couple, the wife, she's going to make a ham. She pulls the ham out and she cuts off both ends. And he goes, why do you do that? And she goes, well, that's the way my mom always did it. And he goes, well, why? And she goes, I don't really know. Let's call. And so they call up mom and they say, hey, why do you cut off the ends of the ham? And she goes, well, that's just the way my mother did it, your grandmother. And they're like, okay, well, but why? And the mom's like, I don't know. And then they call up grandma and she goes, why do you cut off the ends of the ham? She goes, because the pan was too small.
That's classic.
Right? Like, why do we do this? And then you said, well, what if we could open at 80,000? Like, what if we did this? What would it look like if we, like, asking why and what if just leads to that creativity, that leads to reinvention. And anybody listening on here, you could change your whole freaking life just asking those questions and being brave enough and really having faith that things are going to work out in your favor over time. It's to wrap up our time together, because we could go another hour. If you're going to pursue health, if you're going to pursue fitness, if you're going to pursue growing and changing, have the fundamental belief that things are going to work out for the good over time if we do the fundamental things daily.
I agree. And I think asking yourself the question, what needs to be true? So if there's some limiting belief, I've never been able to lose weight. Well, what needs to be true to allow you to lose weight, or to get healthier, or to get off the statins, or for me to avoid knee surgery? Well, for me, that what needs to be true is stop asking orthopedic surgeons for solutions, because they only have one solution. I was under the impression they had multiple solutions. So it's like just asking that question and putting a little bit of a constraint around yourself. Constraint breeds creativity. It just does. I mean, companies that are starting up, that's why they're creative. They don't have huge budgets. Big companies with big budgets tend not to be creative. They tend to be just all about executing. So yeah, I'm with you. That's it's a lot of lessons these last few years. I mean, I joke like, I'm again, to quote Suzette, I'm level 58. You think you'd learned everything by now. It's like, no, you keep learning lessons, most of them the hard way. But I think the valleys are not as low, and the peaks are starting to get higher. So it's all the peaks and valleys, right? That you can't escape that. I think there was a Spencer Johnson or Spencer Anderson book. The key is like, how do you get out of the valley? That's where the next peaks are formed.
Right.
So that's why I encourage all guys, like, hey, if you probably are in a valley health-wise, you can either stay there or you can start climbing the hill, because that's where the magic happens. And yeah, takes a little change, a little hard work, but that's where I think our community makes a huge difference. I mean, when you're doing it with a bunch of guys, you're just going to learn so much, and you're going to have, there's something about suffering together takes you to a whole nother level.
Yeah. That's so important for men. I know you have to get going, and I want to be respectful of time. So we're coming up on our hour. Normally I would ask what books influenced you, but you've named two in our time together.
I've got one here for you, John. This is like Dr. Benjamin Hardy, Be Your Future Self Now. This is like every guy who joins gets this as part of their welcome package. This is our North Star. And the quicker and better and closer you connect with that future self, that's like a vision for a company. That's what future self is. And then the Alpha 5 are the things that move you towards that. The guys who connect quickly and well with their future self, they get amazing results. And so, I mean, I've got mine's at age 60. I've got a bunch of things that are going to happen. And I just asked myself, what am I doing? Do I have the habits and behaviors of level 60 Scott? What would that guy do? Well, that guy doesn't drink IPAs every night. That guy is drinking sparkling water, and he's on Whole 30. He's doing, what does that guy do? And I think it's as simple as that, like modeling behavior. Model the behavior of the person you want to be. You don't necessarily have to have somebody else. I mean, that works too. Create that future self. I mean, that's a huge one. So that's one book. And then another one I read every day, The Daily Stoic, is just another great book by Ryan Holiday. If you're into Stoicism, it's just always there's just always a good little tidbit in there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. I will put those on the list for sure. And then the last thing I like to ask is, what's the best way for people to find you and connect with you?
Best way, I post on LinkedIn every day. So if you just look for Scott Jagodzinski, I'll pop up. And then argentalpha.com is another way to get in touch with me.
Okay, awesome. Well, it has been a pleasure, my friend. I'm looking forward to just growing with you, being in that posse with you. I do want to talk to you maybe about pursuing that next level for sure. I just, men need a posse and like-minded individuals, and they definitely need a push. So I'm excited just to learn more about that,
Yeah, no, and I appreciate all the work you're doing too. It's like, I mean, our missions align really well. So look forward to talking to you more about how we could find ways to work together as we move forward.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being here on the podcast. I know our guests do as well, and wishing you a great weekend.
Great. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Bud.